Well, hello. Good morning. Good morning for me at least. I realize that for some of you that are joining us from all over the globe, it's late afternoon, possibly in the night. We just want to thank you for joining us today for the Kendo UI SaveAs webinar. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is a format we've not tried before, so we're quite excited about it. This next hour is all about how to import and export document formats in JavaScript applications. You've got a lot of options when it comes to getting data into your applications, and you may be surprised to learn that most, if not all, of what you can do on the desktop, you can actually do in the browser as well. Really neat stuff. A few housekeeping items before we get started today. We will be recording this entire presentation today, and then we will publish it on YouTube so that you can watch it later. If you have to drop or something like that, no worries there. You'll be able to catch that. We'll also take all of the code and examples that you see today. We'll put that up on GitHub, and we'll write a blog post so that you can have all of those resources in one place as well as the recording. So look for that possibly tomorrow or the next day at the latest. Really quickly, if I've not met you before, my name is Burke, Holland. I'm on the developer relations team here at Telerik. And I am joined today by the lovely Cody Lindley. Cody, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us one interesting thing about Cody?
Oh man, I didn't know you were going to ask the interesting question thing. I didn't plan anything. I don't even feel that interesting. I'm a front-end engineer, have been for 20 years, worked for Telerik now for a couple years, mostly on Kendo UI. And something interesting, gosh, I'm happily married with 3 kids, which seems unique these days in the tech field. So that's my interesting thing.
That's a good fact. You know, here, I'll give you an interesting fact, Cody. When I was first learning JavaScript, I read a book called JavaScript Enlightenment. And that book was very important to me because I was really struggling with JavaScript at that time. And then years later, we ended up working together, and you actually wrote that book. So that's an interesting thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, hey, man, absolutely. Also on the line with us, we've got the vivacious Todd Motto. Hello, Todd. Tell us all about Todd Motto.
Todd Motto. Yeah, hey everyone. My name's Todd. I am non-American. I live in England, hence the accent. So, yeah, I feel a little bit out of place on these calls. I need to put on an accent. Yeah,
give us your best American accent then, Todd. See if you can get through it.
At the end.
It's completely unfair he has an accent. He's just more interesting by the get-go with the accent.
I know. I just let you do the whole webinar, Todd.
I nearly went for it, but it was about to come out Australian, so I will pass.
Well, that's cool because my English accent comes out Australian. My wife will be like, "That's an Australian accent, buddy." All right, so tell us about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I've been with the developer relations team since February now, so I'm quite new, and I kind of cover the Kendo and the NativeScript side over in Europe. I've been writing JavaScript, Angular as well for many years, and then yeah, I do. One of my interesting facts is I'm probably always writing code and blogging and tweeting and doing various webby things. So. Never non-stop.
This is true. I don't know, Cody, if you noticed it, but Todd's like 6 hours offset from me, I think, 6 hours ahead. And I'll go to bed at like 10 o'clock, and Todd's still tweeting. And I'm like, what? Why is this guy still awake? It's just like 4 in the morning. He should be asleep, but apparently he doesn't sleep. So.
Can't sleep.
I think it was 8 hours for me, and he always seems online.
Yeah, he's a robot. So you can follow any of us or all of us. I've dropped our Twitter handles there below, except for you don't need to follow Todd or Cody because they don't need any more followers. So everybody can just follow me. But in all seriousness, you can follow us. We'll post updates to this webinar when we have the video ready, when the code has been published, when the blog post is there. So that's a good way to keep up to date with what's going on. And also, you will always be up to date with what's going on with Kendo UI. You can also follow the official Kendo UI Twitter account, which is just @KendoUI. We'll post that at the very end. And we not only tweet out updates there for Kendo UI, but we also tweet out a lot of juicy JavaScript goodness. I don't even know how else to say it, just sort of generic topics that hopefully will help you. All right, so let me go over the format real quickly today. We're going to be doing, we're going to split this up into 3 parts. So first, Cody's going to take us through a quick tour of what browser APIs will do for us out of the box and some of the open source solutions that are available when it comes to exporting data out of JavaScript applications. Next, Todd is then going to show us how Kendo UI handles the exporting for you and makes it pretty darn easy. Because Kendo UI is wrapping these DOM APIs in these open source libraries and providing a much more simple interface for this. So we're going to see how that works. And then very lastly, we'll end with me, because I'm definitely the least interesting here. And we're going to show you how to do some document processing on the server, in which I will try to at least attempt to demonstrate how to upload a spreadsheet to a server and then display that spreadsheet in the browser. And that's called Document Processing Libraries from Telerik. So we'll end with that. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A, try to get to as many of your questions as we can. If you've got questions, make sure you drop them into the window as we go along, and we will do our best to get to those at the very end. So with that, Cody, I believe that you're going to start us off, so I'm going to make you the presenter here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. No turning back now.
All right. Hopefully everybody can see my screen now. Since I can't see that you can see it, you guys give me a heads up.
Yes. Affirmative. We can, yes.
Right on. So like Burke said, my objective here is really to run through a couple of demos showcasing what it would be like to go out and just use open source projects and some of the polyfills for the browser APIs that support exporting files or content or anything really out of the browser. Before I begin, there's 2 things I want to mention. The first thing is I used JSBin for all of my demos, and you can actually go and play with these demos as I'm talking about them, or you can get at them and tweak them and look at them. And I highlighted the URL a little bigger in this output, and I'm highlighting it right now. So you'll see this on all of the demos. So if you want to go tweak with it when I'm showing it, you can do that. The other thing I want to say is that most of these demos, all of the demos that I'm going to be talking about are really about how we export content in the client. And I want to mention that it's a really important concept about exporting this stuff out of the client given offline applications. And a lot of times your app might not be connected, and so we are building up a lot of features around exporting content when you don't have internet access. So you might be wondering why this stuff isn't happening on the server, or I'm not showing you open source projects that happen on the server. Obviously there's tons of them. You know, being a JavaScript guy, I would probably use something like Phantom.js and Node.js to produce a screenshot of something and send it back from the server, but really I'm focusing on the client. Okay, so with that said, I think I'll just say it again. My objective here was to show open source projects, and I have to admit, after putting these demos together, Kendo UI really does wrap this up very nicely in a present for you and sort of slides it across the table for you. Because putting all these tools together was really difficult, and mainly, as you might think, because of documentation. I was reminded when I was building these demos of the, open source software is marvelous, and I love it, and I support it 100%, more than most people probably like. But when it comes to documentation and how to get this stuff working, it can be just a minefield of not knowing what you're doing. So,
I actually had that same thought, Cody. When we were going through this earlier, like when we were, kind of going through our demo script, and I was watching your script, and I thought, man, that's way harder than I thought it would be, or maybe just a little bit more complex than I thought it would be. And I think Todd said, well, there was a lot of chaining together of different APIs to get to some end result. So maybe I've spoiled it for people, but we'll let you continue on and show people how to sort of pull this off with what they've got out there already.
Yeah, and the crazy part is I've wrapped this all together. I mean, I'm going to talk through it, but I had to go out and literally I was opening up JavaScript files, reading the API straight from the code. You know, there was no documentation for this stuff. So, and I mean, not that a good engineer shouldn't be able to just pop open the code and read it, but ideally we're all busy in building apps. We want a nice documentation. Well, you will get that with Kendo UI. You won't get that with this stuff. So with that said, I'll just jump in here. So this first demo that we're going to look at is just the idea of wanting to save a text document. We've got a table on this page. You can look at it in this output, and we just want to save the text out of this table. One thing I want to mention is I think it's tempting when we start talking about this stuff to think, well, why don't I just print the page? Every browser has a print button in it. And the distinction here, I think, to keep in mind as I go through these demos is we're talking about printing out a very specific portion of the page or the DOM, which you can't do from a browser print button. And in this case, we're just trying to print the text from this table. So in order to do that, I had to go out and grab this blob.js file on GitHub and this filesaver.js file. And if you're not familiar with blob, you can think of blob as a API in the browser to deal with generic content types or files. You know, really anything that's not JavaScript in a JavaScript format, let's say. And you can go on MDM and read all you want about blob. But this blob's really just a polyfill for browsers that don't support it. And then I had to also include this filesaver.js file in here in order to basically get the browser to download the file I wanted to download. And so this HTML is really just me including these two files. And of course we've got this table you see over here in the output. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that HTML. Now, all I'm doing in this HTML file and JavaScript is I'm not using jQuery, but I'm just selecting this Save As Text Doc button over here with Query Selector All. I'm just adding an event listener click. So when I click this button, obviously the function here executes. And so all I'm doing is I'm grabbing the text out of the table using text content property. I'm grabbing the file name I enter here. I'm creating a blob. And then I'm using this Save As method here with this blob, and it's going to save a text document. So again, I'm using blob.js. Yeah.
So real quickly, that blob.js, is that is a browser API or that is an open source library that somebody created?
It is a browser API. It's actually what fuels the file API, the HTML5 API, file API, or JavaScript API in the browser. It's the underlying sort of foundation to file API. And so this is a polyfill. Really what this blob.js is, it's a polyfill so that you can do new blob.
Okay, so now, it's just sort of normalizing that API across browsers, so I don't have to have different implementations of the same chunk of code.
Yeah, it's normalizing it or adding it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and this Save As, I'm still a little bewildered by this Save As method because it's supposed to be part of a standard, but I can't exactly find it. I don't know if it's some remnants of the file API that never actually got implemented in a bunch of browsers, but the Save As is supposed to be based on some sort of standard. But in all the Googling I could do, I couldn't really get a good handle on why this isn't implemented across all browsers. But this filesaver.js file provides it. It provides that Save As.
You know what the great thing about standards is, right? You have so many to pick from.
True. All right, so as you might expect if you're reading this very short piece of JavaScript, if I put a file name in here and I click Save As Text Document, this code will allow me to export a text document. We'll open this thing up. and it's very small right now, but as you can see, all I did was export the text out of this table. Now, the bad part about this, of course, is that all I get is the text. And really, there probably are some use cases where all you want to do is export the text. But in the example we have, it's probably more likely that you want to export this table as you see it. And so we're going to move to the next demo, and this demo is really about exporting an image instead of just the text out of the DOM. But in order to do this, we of course have to add a bunch more tools, so to speak, and most of these tools are open source. We're going to take advantage of Blob as well, and File Saver here. But I had to add this HTML to Canvas file. HTML to Canvas uses promises, so I had to add this ES6 promise polyfill. And of course we've got our blob that we used in our text demo. But now I need to, because I've got to, in order to get an image of the DOM, I've got to place that DOM in a Canvas element, and then I want to make that Canvas element a blob so I can save it, similar to what we did in the first example. So I had to add this other polyfill that's Canvas to blob, and then we have File Saver.
So wait a minute, let me get that straight. Okay, so you're going to take the HTML, you're going to draw it to a canvas?
That's correct.
Is that right? Okay,
yeah.
And then you're going to take that canvas and you're going to save that canvas as a blob, which then turns it into a file.
It turns it into a format, yes, that the browser can then understand and sort of save out. I'll say, as simply as I can say it, yes.
Okay, I think I got it.
Yeah. And so I'm showing, in all these demos, I sort of listed these tools that I'm using to perform this action in the UI down here. And so this HTML, of course, has all those included. We'll open up this JavaScript file, and you can see I changed this button to save as PNG because what I really want is an image of this table. And so very similar code to what we looked at last time, except what you'll see in here now is you'll see this HTML to Canvas. So what I'm doing is I grab a reference to the table, I pass it to this HTML to Canvas, it takes the DOM, like we were saying, Burke, shoves it into a canvas, and then once it does that, it returns this promise. So I'm using this then here, and it passes the canvas into the callback. And then I just take that canvas and I say to blob, which I get from that canvas to blob file. And you see that right here. And then I just use that SaveAs method again to save the blob. So let's go ahead and try this out. So now I exported an image of that table. We'll open that up. And as you can see, I got a PNG of the table. Now, this is a little bit better than a straight text document. And there are many use cases for this. I think people could probably think of a million. But a lot of times people actually want, PDFs. And so I actually made the next leap here in these demos and started looking for open source projects that allowed me to do this not as an image, but exporting a PDF. So I found this project called JS PDF, which is a fascinating project, amazing piece of code. The documentation made me want to pull my hair out, but I got this thing to work. So just like my other examples, I'm including JS PDF here, and in this situation, there's a very beta solution just to shove a DOM into a PDF, but I couldn't get it to work exactly how I thought would be a legitimate demo. So in this scenario, what I'm actually doing is combining some of the other open source solutions from the previous examples with this JS PDF, where I'm first taking the DOM, shoving it into a canvas, exporting out of the canvas an image, then I'm saving that image to a PDF. And we'll look at this code and walk through it here a little bit.
It's almost as if everything has to go to a canvas before it can go anywhere else.
Well, yeah, it's drawing the DOM, so to speak, is the safest way to do it is to shove it into a canvas today. But I think a lot of people are trying to find a way around that because there's some issues, right? There's some edge case issues. We'll talk about one here at the end, but yeah, the complexity threshold on this stuff's way out there in my opinion. But again, if we're building offline apps, this is the kind of stuff we have to deal with. So it can get the job done. So much like our other demos here, I'm just saving. Oops, I clicked that too fast. I'm just saving as a PDF here. I'm grabbing the file name out of this input. I'm grabbing the table, and like I said, I'm creating an image. So I'm using HTML to canvas again to create an image of this table. And then I create an image placeholder for that. In order to get that image out of the canvas, I use this canvas to data URL, and it produces an image on the fly for me, in a sense, inside this callback function. And inside this callback function, then I create a PDF file. I add that image to the PDF file with add image, and then I save. And in this situation, the PDF solution actually offered me a save method, which was nice. So if we go in here and I hit test, just save this as test, creates a nice PDF for me. It's going to open that up. And as you see, much like the image, I've got a PDF with my table in it. Now, if you're an astute observer, you will have noticed that in both my image and PDF example, the images didn't show up. Now, the reason for this is because I'm in JSBin, and the images that I'm using are not on the same domain. So there's some cross-domain privacy issues, much like you'd experience with iframes or Ajax stuff. So in order to get around this, you actually have to run the stuff locally, like you would if you were serving this from a server. Normally you just have the images on the same server or a subdomain or something like that. So just sort of to prove this works, I'm going to jump over here to Atom. I actually downloaded all of these code examples, threw them in Atom, and
can you bump that font size up there?
Yeah, in the we won't spend much time here. These are just the HTML pages with the JavaScript in it. Perfect. And I'm just jumping in a terminal here. We're going to spin these pages up just so I can serve them locally and show that the images work. All right, so let's jump to the image example. And here's our image, save as PNG example again. And hopefully, let's call it image. I'm hoping I get images out of it this time. And again, this is all running locally off the server. So now if I open this PNG, yep, there we go. So now my images show up. So I'm taking the DOM that contains image elements, I'm shoving all of that into a canvas, and things get really tricky when we start shoving images into canvases, and things get really broken when we decide to shove images on another domain into canvases. There are some ways to make that work. It seemed really dark and scary to me because you start tainting the canvas, and bad things seem to happen when you start tainting, what they call tainting the canvas. But as long as you're running a server with the file images on the same domain, both these solutions with PDF and image should work with images. And I think that's pretty much it for me. The only other thing I just want to clarify here is that if you take this code, say you pulled this code out of JSBin and you tried to run it locally off the local file path on your computer, the images would still fail. You actually have to serve these, and if you noticed when I was in Atom here, I was spinning up a node server here really quickly just to serve these so that it worked. So I think with that clarification, unless you guys want to heckle me about anything about my demo.
Yeah, I was going to say on the image issue, the whole cross-domain thing, it really takes the joy out of web development for me. And especially for people that are just first starting out, it's just such a pain. And with the images, we talked about this earlier, but we ran into this issue, or I did at least years ago when I was working on a project. And as it turns out, when you get that blob out, it's possible to just put nasty things in images. to do damage to people's systems and to sneak it in that way. And so to stop that from happening, they're going to make sure that you own the asset before you are allowed to pull it off as a local asset for yourself. So kind of a pain, and I'm surprised that years later we're sort of still in the same boat.
Yeah, necessary security pain, but still stuff you'd think they would have fixed by now. I know people are getting to the point where they're I think the people behind the scenes have always realized security was very difficult on the web, but I think it's improving. So.
Sure. Well, are we ready to see this the same thing inside of Kendo UI?
Yeah, I'm excited to pass this off because, again, quite honestly, all this stuff was so much easier. I mean, include Kendo UI, and all of these examples would just work very easily. And I mean, it sounds like I'm such a salesman pitch, even when I say it, but it's so true because I've run through the demos that I just created using Kendo, and it took minutes instead of days.
Yeah, and that, it's interesting because exporting content is one of those things where it's not that big of a deal until you need to do it, and then all of a sudden it's like you're trying to build functionality into the web that doesn't even exist. And so we don't talk about it much with Kendo UI. And the reason why we did this webinar is because we had so many questions from people who are like, can you please just talk about importing and exporting content? It's done so frequently in apps, and so. Yeah, let's switch it over to Todd. Todd, are you ready? Before I give you access, you need to close down Reddit and whatever else you're looking at. Are you good to go?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
All right, here it comes. I'm going to make you the presenter here.
No Reddit. Awesome.
All right,
Should
we can
hopefully
see
be
your
able to
screen.
my screen. Well,
Yes,
you
we
can see
can.
my face staring back at you.
Yes, and your gauges. What size gauges are those?
8mm.
Okay. When are you going to stop?
I've stopped.
Okay.
Cool. So, Cody, I'm going to show you the easy way to do this. So, before we kind of start, we'll just look at the assets that we require. I'm pulling in these two style sheets just for making things pretty. This doesn't actually affect this demo, but they're for the next demo after this. So we have a simple jQuery, and then we have this JS zip. So this is actually required for exporting to Excel. So we need this one. Keep that in mind. And then we've just got a bundle of Kendo all, and I've just downloaded these onto my local host. And like Cody said, you can, you basically need to spin up a local web server. So I'm doing the exact same thing here, so we can actually see the exporting working nicely. So I've just got a simple div in here with some information. You can treat this as like a contact card or something. However, I mean, this might be part of a bigger application in a real-world example. And we're using the image here just to show you how this works as well with the Kendo APIs. So we have this A tag, which essentially I'm going to bind onto, and we're going to call some functions that do some cool things. Oh yeah, just put a note in here that if you are binding to an A tag, I've just got a hash in here. So when we press the export button, it's not going to actually go anywhere, and then we can prevent default on the actual event to stop the hash coming up in the URL. So here's the JavaScript, and like Cody, we're not using jQuery, we're just using plain DOM APIs. So we have document query selector. I'm just grabbing the A tag on the page. Obviously, if this was part of a bigger application, you'd want something more sophisticated than just grabbing the first A tag. And then that's basically the export button. And then we've got the contact card, which is just the contact with a class up here of contact. So that's essentially the white div that you can see in the middle of the page here. So Cody's first example, he excuse me, he started off just showing some plain text stuff. So what we can actually do is use Kendo.SaveAs. So this wraps a lot of the things, the APIs that Cody was talking about, and we can actually basically just create a data URI. So this is base 64 stuff. We also have this utility function that we can call, we can call the encode base64, and just like Cody was doing, we were grabbing the text content of the contact card. So this would basically go and grab all the text from the div that we're selecting, and we can pass it into SaveAs after encoding, and then just say I want the file name to be contact.txt, and then let me give it a refresh, and we can press export. We get contact.txt, which then gives us this. So it's not formatted, amazingly, but yeah, you can do things like string trimming and all that kind of thing if you need to replace any characters.
So there's no canvas, there's no blob, there's no save as file, but you're still getting the same text export that Cody was doing in his first demo.
Yeah, exactly, and it's all just wrapped in this API, and I can just change the file names. I can change anything that I want. So it's literally plug and play. So I just include the files and just instruct it what to do, rather than trying to pull all these different pieces together. It's already there for us. So the next one, let me comment this one out. So the next one is moving on to the drawing side of things. So we have Kendo.drawing, which is a part of the bundle up above. We can actually, excuse me, so we can grab our contact card again. This actually returns a promise, so we get our data back here, and we can call export image. And export image is just a different type of method. It tells the Kendo drawing what to basically convert it into. Once that has done, we obviously get the next step in the promise chain. We're given the data back here, and all we're going to do is look at the familiar Kendo save as, pass it the data that we want to the data URI and the file name. So if we so this function is export as and export as. So if we give the page a refresh, we can then press export, and we've got this contact.png, which is PNG, and if you continue to zoom, you can see it will get fuzzy. So that works perfectly. What else have we got? So we have the PDF as well, and you can see how simple these are. So you literally just change the word, export PDF, you can change the file extension to PDF, give the page a refresh, press export, and now I've got a contact.pdf, and you can see this in the browser is just come out exactly how it looks on the page. I've put a little bit of code up here. It's just an object that we can use alongside the PDF. So we can actually put a couple of arguments in here. So we can actually declare the paper size that we want to use. So I'm going to be using A4, and we can also pass in an object to a margin. So we can essentially, I missed my comment there, I was going to break. So we can essentially pass it an object.
I've got a comment here. Sorry to interrupt you. How amazing it is that by default, the quality of that PDF, even the scale of it by default just worked. In other words, you exported the DOM, and what's going on behind the scenes to some degree is they're getting that DOM into the PDF. But like where that DOM is in the PDF, how it scales to that PDF, it's all being abstracted for you, which is really nice. Yet I think you're about to show us how we can also control it all.
Yeah. So I've just put a comment here because these are so we're using A4, but we can actually put A0 to A10. Same with B and C size paper sizes, and then we've got all these other ones: executive, folio, letter, some American ones over there. And then, yeah, we can pass it this margin object. So much like when you open up like a Word document or a Google Doc, you have like margins and stuff around the edge. So I'm just going to pass in 20 millimeter around the sides and then 40 millimeter top and bottom. Now we won't actually see these, but if you've got like a full color background, then this will actually make more sense. But you won't see them on here because everything's white. So when we click export again, we should, now this is shrunken down a little bit, so I'll zoom in. But yeah, that's on A4 with a 20 millimeter margin down the left and right, and everything in the middle. And this comes out as plain embedded.
It is. It's just amazing to me that you can have that much control over the generation of a PDF from a browser. That is just phenomenal. What about the last one over there for tabloid? Like if you do tabloid, does it export your face with like a sensationalistic story about your personal life?
I don't think that that's how it works.
That's how it should work.
Maybe we can edit the API.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, it's
Pull
just a bigger
request.
document.
Yeah, so this really is the tip of the iceberg with this API, in my opinion, because you can start embedding fonts. You can do all sorts of basically you can pretty much configure most of what you can configure when you create a PDF, which if you think about it, it's fonts and all sorts of things.
Yep. There's also one more really awesome thing, which I know Burke absolutely loves. So let's show you that one. So if you've ever used like SVGs for drawing, or even in the browser, like you can create SVG animation, all these kind of things in the browser. So we can actually export this directly to SVG, which is incredible. So let me just refresh this. Export. Then because SVGs are supported in the browser, this isn't going to open up in my Mac Finder. This will actually open up in the browser. So the cool thing about this is that we can actually inspect element. Let me just blow this up a little bit so we can all see this. We can actually see that this is pure SVG. So you've got the image, everything in here has been generated from Kendo, and it's pure SVG in the browser.
That's really cool functionality. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so simple. And I've created 4 different file formats. Well, 3 file formats: SVG, PDF, and what was the last one? Image, so PNG. And we could create a JPEG as well if we wanted by literally just changing a method call. And then if you don't want it to be converted to a drawing, then we can just simply pass it plain text and export a text file. So the amount that you can do with a very, very similar API is insanely great. It's very modular and wrapped for us.
So we've seen how to use the raw API and how much power there is. Can we see what this looks like inside of the Kendo UI widgets and how that's handled?
Yeah, so let me give you a demo of my spreadsheet. So in here, all I've got is it's a grid spreadsheet. They look the same. So we have a grid. This is my div up here, and then we have we're just calling the Kendo grid widget. We're passing in. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to look at the UK police data API. So this actually returns me a bunch of crimes that have happened within these coordinates. So this is what you're seeing here. So I've told
it's all
it
very antisocial in the UK, I feel like.
I know. It's, I just wanted to make us feel great. So we can, if you've used the data source, you can obviously specify data types. So we've got JSON, and this thing here, I'm going to use page size. So we're going to actually paginate the Kendo grid as well. So it doesn't really look like it does much at first. However, if I go up to my trusty little piece up here, so we can go and grab this toolbar property. Let's start with PDF. So we can essentially just pass in an array which says toolbar. I want to add a PDF to it. So if I give this a refresh, we now have this toolbar at the top. So export to PDF. I can give this a click, and you can see that slight loading bar in the middle there. Then we get an export with our data on. So we can actually export this to PDF. One more thing before we do, what we can actually do is pass in like an object property on a high level, so we can pass it on the definition object. So I want to create a file called police data UK, and I want to call it .pdf, and I want all the pages, and that's going to be true. So if I give this a refresh, export to PDF, open this one up, so we get all the pages. Now the only thing with this is that you see the top and the bottom bar on every single page. I'm not sure if there's a way to get around this. But there is when we export to Excel. So this is like the pretty version, but if you want the raw data, we can look at Excel. As a note,
Todd, just to clarify here, I think what's really interesting is the leap that we made from the client to the server and how Kendo UI provides both, right? Not only if you're offline, not only we try to solve this problem if for your users, depending upon the client that they're using. But if they are online, we easily provide them a proxy to the server so that they can generate this on the server and send it back. And our APIs handle both. So it's the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah. Well, the browser support for these kind of advanced APIs is like you're looking around IE 10 plus, because I know you had a couple of like ES6 polyfills. Mm-hmm. So in that instance, like you see here, we've got proxy URL, and I'm just passing it here. So this will actually give me some data back if the client side isn't supported. So you can create some kind of fallback. So everything that you're viewing in this webinar is done in the browser. However, if, for instance, you wanted to look at it at IE8 or IE9, which doesn't support all these APIs, you could actually take that information from the browser, send it back to the server, and the server can then compile the PDF, for example, send it back to you, and then you can then download it on the client. So there's this full circle of browser support and back-end support as well. So it's covered.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Let's get on to Excel. And you can simply just type 5 characters, the word Excel. Super simple. Pass it into our array. Say, toolbar, I want PDF and Excel. And you can obviously remove PDF if you don't want PDF. You'll just keep one or the other. So if we give this export to PDF, so we haven't actually given it any sort of metadata at the moment. So this will just give us export.xlsx. So if we go at the top, I've got one I made earlier, which I'm going to call police data UK.xlsx, however you pronounce it. And I'm going to ask for all the pages, and this comes out a little bit differently than when you export to a PDF. So you just get like the raw data. We can have a look at this, and we get everything that comes back in the API response. So I've actually limited the API response. It's a lot bigger than this, but this is the full data that I've asked for. Yeah, go on, sorry.
No, I mean, what's interesting, you're only showing us the grid. This is built into the grid widget.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a handful of Kendo UI widgets that also have this built in.
Yeah, absolutely. Even ones that you don't think would support this kind of export functionality, like a map, for instance. Like here I've got the dojo running with all the map. Is very interactive. I can export as SVG. I can export as PDF, so I can grab all of these. They're already in the browser for me, and it works instantly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you could export maps.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can. I'm amazed at the function. This is built into like the QR code reader. It's built into all of the data visualization. So like your gauges and your stock chart and your spark line.
Yeah, we've got a gauge example here. So I can export these as PDF. Export as image. Just try a PNG. Yeah, so that.
Oh my gosh.
That would probably look better on a white background. What else have we got?
Yeah, I've got the list handy of every widget. So if somebody asks a question of what exactly widgets are support exporting features, I can answer that easily if somebody asks that question.
Nice. I love looking at the list here. It looks like quite a few. And you're right, Todd, there's a bunch that I did not realize. Wow, way more than I thought. All right, well, we're running a little bit short on time, so if you don't mind, Todd, I'm going to steal the spotlight for just a minute and talk about some of the server-side stuff. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm all flushed out, so done. Back to you.
Awesome.
Wait a minute.
Demos. Thank you.
I think just say drawing one more time.
To me.
Yeah, you.
Drawing.
Yeah, that's
perfect.
Awesome.
Bye.
All right. All right, let's change the presenter back to me. And you guys can tell me when you see my screen.
We see it?
You guys see it? We're good to go?
Yep.
All right.
Result.
Yes. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about something that we provide for the UI for ASP.NET MVC customers, which is the document processing libraries. And this is that server-side stuff that Cody was talking about earlier, where obviously not just in .NET, but in most of the server-side languages, there's some sort of library or API that's provided for you to work with documents. And in the case of Visual Studio and .NET, and obviously the Microsoft ecosystem, the ability to work with Office documents, since Microsoft owns all of that stuff, is really unlimited. And so we're going to look at how to do some of that today. We'll just sort of scratch the surface of that API. The first thing that I want to look at is how you can take a spreadsheet rather that's on your file system and show it in the browser. In this example here, I have a spreadsheet right here, and this is the Razor syntax and the Fluent API that generates the spreadsheet. Nothing really of note here. I'm just giving it a name that becomes the ID. And then I'm setting its style to be a width of 100% so that it'll take up the whole window. And then I'm giving the rows an initial height of 50. So I can give the columns and rows additional default sizes depending on how I want the spreadsheet to display. And then you'll notice here that when the document's ready, I'm going to call this window.app.update spreadsheet. And I've put this here in the head of the page. Normally you would not do this. You have this all bundled up and it would be in your JavaScript file that you deliver down, but since this is just a demo, I'm basically just attaching this custom window object here, calling update spreadsheet, and I'm going to read from the home controller the read action, and then when it's done, I'm going to take this, I'm going to call spreadsheet, and then from JSON. So this is an API on the spreadsheet that basically says, from the JSON data that I get back, populate the spreadsheet. We'll look at how all that works because the JSON data does have to be in the right format in order for that to work. So let's look at the home controller real quickly. You'll see that the read method uses server.mappath, and it goes over here to app data spreadsheets and this police data UK, which doesn't actually exist yet. And if we look on the file system, here's app data spreadsheets. So let's pull that in. Let me do police data UK, and I'll just copy this, and then we'll back out here and paste it back in. Not even have to include this in the project, right? It's on the file system, it's good to go. So when this actually runs, this turns into C:\dev / the actual physical file to the path to the physical file. And then I'm basically turning that thing into a workbook using this Telerik web spreadsheet workbook. And this is the document processing library that we provide with the UI for ASP.NET MVC. This is new as of Q1 of 2016 that we're now shipping the same support that's in ASP.NET Ajax for ASP.NET MVC customers. And then lastly, we're going to use Newtonsoft.json to serialize it, but we're going to use our document processing library to tell it exactly how and the format that it needs to be in. So you don't have to worry about whether or not you're sending the data in the right format or how the serialization needs to look. You just call the API and then we worry about the serialization for you since we know what the widget is expecting. So all of those things being there, let's jump out to our application here. This is what it looks like. It's not terribly impressive. And then let's do a refresh here on the page. Let the application come back up. And then there we go. Here, our data is now in the spreadsheet. So the font size is a little low, but you can see this is exactly what Todd exported out of his spreadsheet. It's now in mine. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how you can actually upload a spreadsheet to the server and then display that spreadsheet back in the browser. And this actually blew my mind a little bit when I first did this. It's just not that difficult. So the first thing that we want to do is actually add an upload control. I'm going to come over here and grab some of my trusty scripts here so you guys don't have to watch me type. Trust me, I'm saving you all sorts of grief by not having to watch me fumble through. And I'm just going to stick it right up here, and then I'll adjust the indentation. This is a Kendo UI upload control. If you've ever tried to upload files on the web, you know that it can be a giant pain in the rear. There's the whole issue of should I put it in a form? Does it need to post back? With the Kendo UI upload widget, I'm basically saying that it's going to be called file, so it's the variable that's going to go across the wire that contains our files. And then it's async, so it's going to happen in an Ajax request. And then when the thing is complete, so when the upload is actually complete, it fires this event and it's going to update the spreadsheet. That's the same method that we were calling earlier. So let's save this, and then we need to add in to our controller a couple of different methods here. So let me go down and copy these, and we'll talk about what these do. We have a save method here. Let's put these back down in our controller. Keep the read method. Oh yes, I have to stop and restart. Wish there was a way to just keep on coding. All right, so we have a save method here. So this is the method that gets called by the upload control. And when it gets called, this files variable, that's the one that we had designated before, it's going to contain either one or multiple files. And it's basically just saying if we selected a file, then for each file that we selected, go ahead and get the physical file for the server here. And then you can see I'm saying file save as the physical path. So I'm basically taking the file name that's coming in, I'm adding in the physical path where I want it to go, which is that spreadsheets folder, then I'm saving it, and then I'm putting that file name in the session so that the next time the spreadsheet requests data, it gets whatever file was just uploaded. Now obviously if I uploaded multiple files, it would only get like the last one because this would be overwritten each time, but we're only working with one file here for the demo, so that's okay. And then we're going to return an empty string to signify success to the upload control. And then we've got a remove method, which we're not going to use, and that's okay. And then up here on the read, we just want to change this here so that instead of this specific one, we're looking at, I think I called it, so session file to load. There we go. And then let's just pull this stuff off the end. All right, so there we go. We'll instead of reading in by default the police data, we'll just read in whatever the session variable holds for our latest file here, which should be the file that we just uploaded. And then the last thing we want to do is just pull this out. We don't want the spreadsheet to automatically do anything for us. We don't want it to try to load a spreadsheet until one's actually been uploaded. So if I have done all of that correctly, what are the chances of that? Let's go ahead and fire this up. And what we should be able to do when this loads up is we should be able to browse the local file system, pick a spreadsheet, any spreadsheet, shouldn't matter, and then we should be able to upload it to the server, and then the spreadsheet would then immediately make a call after the successful upload, get the spreadsheet, and display it in the browser. So this would be considered a non-trivial piece of functionality that you would have to add to any application. So we'll say select files, and that'll give us a file dialog here. We can pick any of these. I'm just going to pick this worksheet in priority matrix action. And you can see that we get a status bar that it's been uploaded here. And then wait for it. Boom. There it is. Let me close this GoToMeeting window here. And you can see that we now have the spreadsheet complete with all the formatting right inside of the browser, complete with tabs. So if you upload a spreadsheet that has multiple tabs, you'll get the multiple tabs in your spreadsheet right within your browser. The document processing libraries do a whole lot more than that as well. You can upload a spreadsheet and then you can completely tweak that spreadsheet in any way, shape, or form. You can add data to it, you can pull data out, you can format it, you can run formulas, you can do all sorts of things with the document processing libraries before you actually send that spreadsheet back. So let's do this. With that, I'm going to jump over here to our slides. And let's get into a little bit of Q&A. But before we do that, I just want to do some very last next steps for everyone that was on this webinar today, because we're coming up on our hour. Telerik.com/KendoUI, that's where you can get everything that you've seen today. Most of what you've seen today is included in Kendo UI Professional, although I believe, Cody, are the drawing APIs part of Kendo UI Core? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, they are. The SaveAs, well, actually, the drawing, I believe the underlying APIs are the professional widgets, of course, aren't. And I think, man, I
believe that's correct. I believe that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. And the database stuff, of course, is part of professional as well, as is the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Yeah. We've recorded this today. It'll be available later on YouTube. Watch for a blog post. We'll take all the code that I had and that Todd had and that Cody had. We'll put it all in a GitHub repo so that you guys can grab it and look for it. Follow that @KendoUI account for the latest news and those juicy links that I was talking about. And then you can follow us and please tweet at us. We love to hear from you. If you have questions, concerns, or if you just want to talk about World of Warcraft with Todd, he would love to do that as well. So you can find us there. And with that, if you have to drop, well, we totally understand. For those that want to stick around, we're going to drop into the questions here and see if we can answer a few. I just have to figure out how to make this window a little bit bigger so I can actually see the questions. You see here, expand, Expand that. Got this little teeny tiny window. All right, so does the Kendo UI chart tool have support for export to image or PDF? Yeah, so that was something that we covered there at the very end. Todd, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Hey, sorry, I was just muting myself. So, let me bring up the chart tools. So we've got the, sorry, you should have given me like 10 seconds.
That's all right. Basically, the question that was asked was the one that you answered in your demo, which is just can you take the charts and export those the same way that you were exporting from the grid? And the answer is yes, absolutely. And let's
I was just trying to find the right demo with it. So yeah, it's got the export to PDF capability up there.
Yeah, and where I thought I saw Cody, I thought I saw you. You want to just run over the list of widgets that you dropped in there that actually does support the export?
Yeah, so on the list is spreadsheet, grid, editor, scheduler, Gnet, map, pivot, grid, tree list, diagram, radial gauge, linear gauge, QR code, sparkline, stock chart, quite a few of them.
Yeah, that is a ton. Somebody asked a great question, which is something we didn't go over, is can you export to a CSV file? And the answer is yes, you can, and that is actually really, really easy because comma-separated values is just a text file with separated values. There's a couple of demos for that we provide in our documentation for the client side and for the server side, and we'll make sure to include those in our follow-up blog post. But yes, if you can get CSV to be part of your strategy and you can get everybody to buy onto that, that's awesome because CSV is a simple and awesome file format. Let's see here. What are some others? Can I export a page with multiple widgets to PDF? Ooh, that's an interesting question. Cody, how would you go about doing that? I think I know what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, so I think to clarify, when we say a particular widget provides exporting features, what we mean is that widget has a feature built into it for exporting. But because we showed the underlying APIs for all this stuff, you can literally export anything you want, right? You could wrap a div around 2 Kendo UI widgets and export it as a PDF or an image or an SVG file. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. And so like in my demo code, like I'm literally just grabbing a reference to a DOM node, and anything inside that DOM node will get exported. So same thing with our APIs, right? We could tell it to create a PDF of the body, and it would include everything inside the body. If there were 20 widgets inside the body, it would print it. This is the distinction between the widgets that have built-in features to them for exporting specific content in the features. But of course, it never stops you from exporting anything, literally anything you want in the DOM. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the same thing that I would have done. Okay, so here's another question. Let me see here. Is it possible? Somebody asked, can you change the placement and the style of those export buttons that are in the Kendo UI grid? Todd, I mean, I know the answer to that off the top of my head, but do you want to answer that one as well, or you want me to take that one?
So basically just the stuff in the toolbar.
Yeah, the toolbar, exactly.
Yeah, completely. So the examples that I was using were basically just the pre-made ones using the material style. So you could either override them or completely delete them and just write your own. So it's fully customizable, yeah.
Excellent. Here's a good question from Ben. Ben actually asked a lot of good questions. Next time we're going to have Ben Dalton on this webinar and have him help us create some good demos. He asked, is there a way to add custom values to the top of the Excel export? For example, report name, generated by, generation date. So essentially time stamping with a header or something like that for the export. I can answer that from the server side. When you're using the document processing libraries, you can do anything you want to that spreadsheet. I mean, anything. You can embed a video in that sucker and send it back down to the client if that's what you really want to do. Cody, you want to address that on the client side?
So the question, if I understand the question correctly, they're asking if they can customize the built-in feature to the widget?
Well, basically they're saying when they call export, like say you have a grid full of data and they export it, and when you export it, they want to at that time add some custom headers to the Excel file or to the PDF. Can you do that with the API?
So with the PDF, yes, I believe that is part. I mean, like we were kind of saying, you can customize the PDF very heavily. I'm not quite sure if you can edit the XML document. Obviously, I think you could probably do it on the server, like you said. I'm not sure. Todd, are you aware if you can edit that Excel document in the client?
I don't know if you can edit the physical data that goes into it, but when you basically export it, you can pass like metadata and stuff to it and like custom like titles to the document, so you can actually customize the page that gets outputted before. But I'm not sure if you can touch the data physically. And there is obviously the change function which runs when you export things. So I actually played around with the API. You can basically loop through the data set and you can do things, and whatever you can do in JavaScript is you can customize anything you want. So yeah, you can fully access the data set while it's being exported, format it in your own way, and then you can add custom properties. There was title, there was a couple of other ones which I can't remember, I think description, stuff like this, to the actual PDF which gets exported. So yeah.
Yeah, so I would agree with that and say that this is the web, so the question, is it possible? The answer is always pretty much yes. Now, whether or not the widgets do that for you, or whether or not you need to tie into the event and add that in before you send it out, that's absolutely possible and plausible. Cody, this one's for you, man. And I understand this question, and I'm interested to see how you'll answer it. Is it possible to load the needed resources for export only when you need them, like using required.js or some other bundler? In other words, if I don't want to pull it in and use it because the person's not going to use it, and I don't know how that might be figured out by the application, maybe depending upon their role or their intention inside of the application. Is there a way to load in just that library just when I need it and not all the time?
Was there a clarification in the question if they're talking about the open source tools or our tools?
I imagine this would apply to both, right? But I get I get the question, right? Like, I don't want to load in libraries that people are never going to press that button.
Yeah, so I think from the open, like the tools I showed, the demos I showed, of course, right? Like we can, of course, as when somebody clicks a button, we can dynamically drop a script tag in a page. And include those files on demand, so to speak. And of course, we can use all sorts of loaders as well to accomplish the same thing, whether it's an AMD loader or an ES6 loader of some flavor. So all of that's possible on demand. Now, when it's built into our tools, it's broken up a little bit. Some of the features are broken into the data widgets, and some of it's broken into core Kendo UI. So when you include core Kendo UI, you get like the SaveAs. Even if we used our AMD even if you were loading Kendo UI using AMD modules, you would still get it as part of the core package. But then I think if you were using AMD modules, you could load like the data visualization widgets, and that drawing API would come through the AMD modules, and you could, of course, do that on demand as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it is part of Kendo UI core. I believe it's the core part of that core module, and I'd have to go back and look at the builder, but I'm not sure if you can exclude that functionality or not. Actually, I think that you can. I think you can specify in the custom build that you don't want PDF to be included in there automatically.
Well, yeah, I mean, the core's in GitHub, right? So if you download the core from GitHub and you construct your own version of it, you can do anything you want.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great question. And then the other option that you have, of course, is the server-side stuff. So if you're using the document processing libraries, obviously that gives you a whole lot more flexibility. Exporting something that can be handled in the client, although when handled on the server, it gives you a lot more power. Something servers are really good at, and exporting documents just happens to be one of them. All right, I think we got time for, actually, you know what, we're already 10 minutes over, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We got a ton of questions. We'll try to answer a few more of these in our upcoming blog post. So with that, I want to thank everybody for showing up. Thank you, Cody. Appreciate you being here today. Thank you, Todd, as well. Appreciate all the demos. And thank you so very much, and we will see everyone next time.